Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the 2026 European cybersecurity landscape. And to kick things off, let's look at a scenario that might hit a little too close to home for some of you. Picture this. Just 2 years ago, a fast-growing, 600-person German fintech company made a totally terrifying discovery. Literally 3 months before a major regulatory deadline, they realized their US-based cybersecurity vendor had absolutely zero idea what European DORA compliance actually required. No clue. The vendor had sold them the shiny EU compliance package, but when the fintech's leadership finally lifted the hood, they found out it was just a rebadged SOC 2 checklist with the word GDPR sprinkled on top. Naturally, they had to scramble, burning massive amounts of time and money to find a provider who truly understood European financial regulation.
And, well, that brings us to a pretty harsh reality. As this analysis points out, the absolute biggest mistake companies make is assuming that US compliance expertise seamlessly translates into EU regulatory knowledge. Because, spoiler alert, it doesn't. The European threat environment, the super strict data sovereignty requirements, the complex web of cross-border regulations, it's just fundamentally a different beast. You simply cannot copy and paste the Silicon Valley playbook into a Frankfurt server room and expect it to hold up when the regulators inevitably come knocking.
So over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack this critical market intelligence, why Europe is different, the regulatory game changers you need to know, how to objectively choose a provider, the top European firms for 2026, and finally, a quick boardroom reality check on pricing.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1. Why Europe is different.
To really understand the European market, you have to realize that cybersecurity and data privacy are inexorably linked. You can't just be good at stopping hackers, you literally have to be flawless at proving to a regulator exactly how you manage the data while doing it. This creates a really sharp contrast between a US-centric boilerplate approach and true European readiness. A US vendor is going to default to SOC 2 checklists and American data centers. But an EU native vendor, they offer ironclad data sovereignty and master Schrems 2 compliance. That means they know exactly how to handle the strict rules on cross-border data transfers so your data isn't illegally shipped overseas. They aren't just memorizing acronyms, they are totally fluent in NIS2 and DORA. Look, if your vendor's monitoring infrastructure pumps your sensitive data back to the US, you are already out of compliance before a breach even happens.
Which brings us to Section 2, the regulatory game changers.
All these geographic differences build up into a massive compliance burden. And looking at this timeline, the regulatory window is rapidly closing. GDPR enforcement has matured a lot since 2018. It's no longer just about slapping a privacy policy on your website. Regulators want hard proof that your technical measures actually work. And they have issued over 4.5 billion euros in fines, yes, billion with a B, to prove they're dead serious. Then we have the NIS2 directive, which took effect in October 2024. And right on its heels, DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, hit the financial sector in January 2025. Now, the sheer scale of the NIS2 directive is what makes it such a massive disruptor. It doesn't just apply to your obvious tech companies anymore. It expands to 18 critical sectors. We're talking everything from energy to healthcare to public administration. And get this, if you have an incident, you have exactly 24 hours to report it. Just 24 hours. And the financial stakes? Fines can reach up to 10 million euros or 2% of your global turnover. So the takeaway here is crystal clear. Your cybersecurity vendor's regulatory ignorance is your massive financial risk. All right, so moving to Section 3, how to actually choose a provider in this landscape.
You might be wondering, how do we navigate this absolute minefield? Well, under an objective evaluation framework, technical skills are really only one piece of the puzzle. As you can see, they make up just 20% of the criteria. Notice that EU regulatory expertise, cross-border capability, and actual client outcomes carry equal or near equal weight. A balanced methodology dictates these rankings. I mean, being able to hack a web app is great and all, but can the firm serve a client across Germany, France, and Poland while seamlessly navigating 3 totally different national implementations of NIS2 and deliver the final report in the local languages? That is the real test of a European provider.
Which perfectly sets up Section 4, the top European providers. You see, Europe didn't build the Silicon Valley for cybersecurity. It built a continent of firms where trust is earned in the regulator's office and at 3 a.m. in an incident response war room, not with splashy billboard ads. Coming in at number 1 on our sources ranking is Atlant Security. They really stand out as the undisputed leader for comprehensive, consulting-led security in the European market. What secures their top spot is this rare combination. They bring US-grade technical depth to the table, but they pair it with a native working command of NIS2, DORA, and GDPR. Plus, they operate with a fixed pricing model in euros. That means you don't get ambushed by surprise hourly billing, and they provide zero-commission, vendor-agnostic advice. When they do a readiness assessment, it's mapped directly to specific regulatory articles, providing you the roadmap that European regulators actually respect. Of course, different enterprise needs dictate different provider choices. With Secure, based up in Finland, is fantastic for Nordic enterprises. They utilize this really cool co-security model, where they actively build your in-house capability rather than making you fully dependent on them. If you need massive, continent-scale managed security services, Orange Cyber Defense in France runs 17 security operations centers globally and just has unparalleled reach. And if you're operating in Germany and need true government-grade security, SecuNet is the preferred partner of the German Federal Office for Information Security, utilizing architectures specifically designed for classified state secrets.
We also see some incredible specialized players where regional intelligence adds critical value. For instance, Kudelski Security in Switzerland is the absolute go-to for privacy-first operations and Swiss data sovereignty. Over in the Benelux region, Northwave is your first call for elite digital forensics and incident response. They even handle crisis communications when a breach goes public, which is a lifesaver. And for mid-market companies needing enterprise-grade detection without the massive invoice, Romania's Bitdefender offers highly cost-effective managed detection and response powered by their world-class detection engines.
Now, knowing who is out there is great, but the crucial point is how to evaluate them for yourself and avoid some serious pitfalls. Keep a sharp eye out for these red flags. If a vendor treats NIS2 like a generic checklist, run. If they confuse GDPR's very specific legal mandates with generic best practices, run. If they cannot guarantee that your data stays in the EU or EEA, that is a massive compliance breach just waiting to happen. Actually, here's a pro tip from the explainer. Ask to see their Data Processing Agreement, or DPA. If they can't produce a robust, European-savvy DPA immediately, they simply do not have the regulatory depth your business needs to survive an audit.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, the pricing reality check.
It's time to answer the most common boardroom question out there. What is this actually going to cost us? Well, for a typical web application penetration test, geography heavily impacts your invoice. In Eastern and Southern Europe, a test runs roughly from 5,000 to 18,000 euros. Move over to Western Europe, and that baseline jumps to 8,000 up to 25,000 euros. And if you're in the Nordics or Switzerland, you are looking at premium rates of 12,000 all the way up to 35,000 euros. Now, cost efficiency definitely exists in Eastern Europe, but remember, the value you get ultimately depends on matching the firm's specific regulatory fluency to your specific geographic and industry risk profile.
And that brings us to our final takeaway. The source material leaves us with this pretty stark reminder. A 10,000 euro pen test that completely misses critical vulnerabilities is infinitely more expensive than a 25,000 euro test that prevents a devastating breach and a multi-million euro NIS2 fine. So, as you look at your own security posture this year, I want you to ask yourself a really hard question. Is your current cybersecurity provider truly keeping your business safe under the crushing weight of European law, or are they just checking a box? Thank you so much for joining this explainer.